Hi, kiddos. Okay, so Miss Morga's going to tell you about bishops today. So we've talked about deacons, we've talked about priests. Now we're going to talk about bishops. Okay, now here's how Miss Morga's going to explain it to you. So imagine that at All Saints we have our own little church in K1, and all of you guys are all the people that go to Mass. You're all the people that go to Mass. So that's the church, okay? Then Mrs. Brown is kind of like the deacon. So she's in charge of helping all of you get to heaven and helping Miss Morga make sure that I can help all of you get to heaven. Then there's Miss Morga, who is in charge of just all of you. My whole job is to make sure that all of you are happy and healthy and know that you are so loved by everyone, including God. So we have the church, and then we have Mrs. Brown, who helps you, and Miss Morga. Then we have Miss Morga, who's in charge of all of you. And then we have Mr. Conroy, who's in charge of the whole school, all the different classrooms. Well, the same thing is kind of like bishops. So we have the church, and then we have deacons who help the priest and everybody who goes to Mass. And then we have the priest who's in charge of everybody at the parish. So Father Lee, he's in charge of everybody at the parish. And then we have a bunch of different parishes. Just like at All Saints, there's a bunch of different classrooms. Same thing, bunch of different churches. So there has to be someone who's in charge of all of the churches. And that is the bishop. He's kind of like Mr. Conroy. You know how Mr. Conroy, he has to take care of all of the classrooms? Well, the same thing. The bishop has to take care of all of the parishes. So there are a lot of bishops, and the bishops, they can perform all of the sacraments. So they're allowed to perform baptism, confession, confirmation, first communion, marriages, holy orders. And holy orders is when you decide that you're not going to get married. Instead, you're going to give your whole life just to Jesus. Just to Jesus. No one else. Just Jesus. When you're married, you also want to give your life to Jesus, but also you have to pay attention to the other person and your family that you have. When you get holy orders, you don't pay attention to anyone but Jesus and what Jesus tells you to do. So, for example, Father Lee, he gave his whole life to Jesus, and Jesus said, I want you to be the priest at All Saints and take care of all the little kiddos there and all the people who are there. So that's what he does. So when you get holy orders, that's what you're saying. You're saying, I'm only going to do what Jesus tells me, and my whole life is devoted to Jesus. Okay. And then you can also give anointing of the sick. So all 7 sacraments you can give as a bishop. We have a bishop. Now, okay, the area that the bishop is in charge of, it's called the diocese. The diocese. So we're at All Saints. But the diocese, that means the group, the big group of parishes, it's called the Arlington Diocese. So that's All Saints and Holy Trinity and St. Leo's and all the parishes in Arlington Diocese. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And there has to be one person in charge of it, of all those parishes. And that is the bishop. And you might be wondering, why does there have to be someone in charge of it? Father Lee does a great job. And you're right. But maybe Father Lee has a question, because you know what? 2 minds is better than 1. What do I always say? Teamwork makes the dream work. And sometimes Father Lee has a question that he needs to ask someone. So he asks Bishop Burbage. That is our bishop. So I'm going to show you a picture of him. Here we go. Here's Bishop Burbage. There he is. He's right there. And he has this special little hat. That's how you know he's a bishop. He wears this special little hat. And here's the Pope. The Pope, we'll talk about him tomorrow, but he's the Bishop of Rome. We'll talk about him tomorrow. But here he is. He met the Pope. How nice. He is from Pennsylvania. How interesting. But the Pope says, this is how you get assigned. The Pope wrote him a letter and he said, would you please be the bishop in charge of all of the Arlington diocese? And Bishop Burbage, he prayed and he prayed and he prayed and he said, God, is this what you want me to do? God said yes, and now here he is. And you know what? Let me tell you something interesting about him is that he went to school for a really long time to make sure that he knew how to be a good teacher, because it's important when you're in charge of a lot of people to know how to be a good teacher. So he cares a lot about you guys. So today I want you to be saying an extra prayer for Bishop Burbage, that he can hear what God has to say in his heart and pay attention. All right, now it is your turn to go color. There's a coloring page of the bishop. Make sure that you color his little hat. It should be pink or red or purple, just a perfect little color. And it's just little right there on the top of his head, and that says that he is the bishop. And when he says mass, he wears a big, tall hat. Maybe you've seen it before. Maybe you've seen the bishop before. That would be really cool. He's come to our school many times, so that's very exciting. He works with Dr. Vorbach. I don't know if you remember Dr. Vorbach, but he came by and yes, you had to spell Vorbach. Remember when we were doing the Itsy Bitsy Spider Way at the beginning of the year. All right, friends. Have fun coloring. See you later. Bye.